As a 501c3, the JCRC does not support or oppose any candidate for public office. However, these meetings are critical to fulfilling our mission to educate the Jewish community and to promote civic participation. The JCRC serves as the public affairs and the community relations arm of the Greater Washington area Jewish community, over 300,000 strong. We represent more than 100 organizations, synagogues, and schools to advocate not only for the needs and values of the Jewish community, but also for the well-being of everyone in our community, especially those who are vulnerable. The JCRC is focused on combating anti-Semitism and supporting the state of Israel, and we are strongly committed to cultivating a society based on freedom, equity, justice, and pluralism. Now let me introduce our guest. We're honored that he's here with us today, who is running for Maryland Comptroller. Mayor Tim Adams, who was sworn in to a 4-year term as mayor of Bowie in November of 2019. He is the first African-American to be elected mayor in that city's 138 history. In his role as mayor, Tim's helped Bowie successfully navigate the pandemic while balancing city budgets without raising taxes. We'd probably appreciate if you could teach a lot of mayors how to do that. He also has spearheaded initiatives to provide a more level playing field for minority-owned businesses and small businesses, contributing to the city's continued economic growth. Previously, Tim was the founder, president, and chief executive officer of Systems of Applications and Technology, which provided highly specialized services from testing and training, range operations and maintenance to engineer, IT, and logistics for the nation's national security sector, for our national security sector. His company, with annual revenues nearing $100 million, was recognized by the Washington Business Journal as one of the 10 leading minority-owned companies in the Greater Washington area. Tim is a proud HBCU graduate, receiving his Bachelor's of Science from Xavier University and his MBA from the University of New Orleans. Tim, it's nice to have you with us today. The first question, please, sir, is why are you running for controller? And if everybody would like to take themselves off video, that would be nice so we can have a more personal and intimate conversation, but that's up to everybody on this call.
Hi, first and foremost, thank you for having me this morning. It's always great to have an opportunity to share my journey and to let people get to know me. Because I think that's the most important thing we can do at this time, is get to know each other, get to know the character and personality of the individual. I think the reason that I'm running is one that's just very simplistic to me, and I think it should be for all of us. And that's just, I want to make sure that for those coming behind us, and even for us, that we have a state that's economically and fiscally sound, but also one that has the inclusion and the fairness for all of us. You know, I've been very fortunate, as you talked about my history and where I've come from. You know, I grew up very poor. And I've had an opportunity, particularly through education, to achieve things in my life. And I was blessed to be able to do that. And I'm at a point in my life now, as we look around and we look at some of the things going on with the hate and the economic conditions and all of those things, that it was time for me to focus more on helping those who are coming behind us, as well as ourselves. And so that's why I'm running. It's important. You know, I have a grandson, and I look at him and I think about what kind of world do we want to leave for him, you know, but particularly what kind of state do we want to create, you know, and we can do that here. We can do that in Maryland, you know, so that's a part of why I want to do it. It's about being able to take care of our future and make sure that we try to create an environment where everybody has an opportunity, but just as importantly, that we protect everyone. You know, we look at the hate that's going on around in the country and even here in the state. You know, we've got to address that. And I think there are some real common bonds that we can all come together to do that, to address those.
Mayor, let me ask you a question. When you look at the world that we live in today, and part of your opening remarks is that we have to leave a better world behind for our children. What are those things that specifically enter your mind that we have to change to create that better world?
Well, as we talk about that, it goes back to kind of the foundation of my campaign, and that is accountability, justice, and change. Accountability, making sure that, a lot of people don't realize that the comptroller is actually the chief fiscal officer of the state of Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that you're the watchdog. You're the individual who needs to be watching and making sure that every dollar that we spend, so to speak, is spent appropriately, and that we're getting the most bang for our buck. That you're that person who's looking out for the interests of the taxpayers. And in doing so, that means you're looking out for the financial interests of the state. And we also have that Board of Public Works, which we know is comprised of the governor, the legislature, and the comptroller. And again, that's one of the reasons why I wanted, because the comptroller is typically that deciding vote on making sure that the people, the taxpayers, are represented, and the decisions that are made should not be politically based, but should be about what's best for our state. And so that includes, making sure that it's equal opportunity for everyone. Part of that goes to, we talk about the Board of Public Works, but even talking about, equity and inclusion. And that includes everything. And making sure we do that. So go ahead.
So let me ask you, it's interesting during this campaign, and I know Peter Francho for a long time. I've had a lot of conversations with him about the controller's office, and I don't think people truly understand the breadth and depth of how large that office is, how many employees it has, how much info it is. Can you give people a sense of the scope of the controller's office and the responsibilities you would take on, and then explain how you could use that large infrastructure to better the lives of Marylanders?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thank you, because it's important people understand, and that's a part of the reason why I'm running. As I talked about a little earlier, it's about being the chief fiscal officer of the state. But what a lot of people will try to oversimplify the comptroller's office, and they'll talk about the tax man, paying your taxes. But it's so much more than that. One of the things, and I'll go back to lay that foundation, is understand I grew a business from the trunk of my car to one of the largest Black-owned businesses in the nation. Every day, hundreds and hundreds of men and women put on my SATEC badge and go out and do national defense and national security. I have people who work out of 23 different states now, and at any time I have teams all around the world.
Do you still own the business?
Fortunate. Yes, I do.
Oh,
yes, I do. And we're still growing.
wow.
And that's why it's so important. And I'll go back to what you said. And people ask me that question all the time. Why are you doing this? But the reality is that people did it for me. And I'm gonna go on a little tangent and I'll get back to it. I think it's important we understand that. And as we talk about me growing one of the largest Black-owned businesses in the nation, I also know our history and how when it came to civil rights and other things, how we all bonded together, how the Jewish community was there, who had gone through the persecutions and understood that, and helped to create that environment where we could all thrive and we could all do what we need to do. That fairness helps us all. And so I have that real understanding and that appreciation for that. So when I talk about my business growing, it goes back to, again, trying to create those opportunities for those coming behind. Understand when you talk about the comptroller's office, you're talking about the paymaster. Understand the comptroller pays all of the state employees and all the vendors, just like I've had to do with my large business. The comptroller's office has over 1,200 employees. I have over 1,000 employees, and more than that when you come to subcontracts and the joint ventures and all of that. So you have to understand how to do that and know those ins and outs. Comptroller's office is one that you have to look at, the Board of Estimates, where you're helping to estimate dollars that will be coming in next year, you know, and being able to create an environment where you can give to the legislature and to the governor a way to do that. You have to understand that that's the where you start determining how much debt can we take on as a state. How can we handle that? How can we make sure that we maintain our AAA bond rating? Because the cost of money is going up. We're looking at where we're at now with inflation going up, with the looming potential of a recession and all that. I've led a very large organization through 2 recessions and a pandemic. And I think we need that kind of fiscal experience as we move forward.
So,
you know,
I apologize. Please continue.
No, that's okay. But there are so many pieces to that. When we start talking about, you know, the pension system, you know, one needs to understand how that, because you sit there on all of those costs, you know, that go along with that. You know, how do we make sure the pension system is there for all of the state employees and others that are there? You know, I've sat on boards. I've you know, that's part of that fiduciary responsibility, you know, of having that experience. You know, and so there are all those things that go along, you know, with being the comptroller that people don't think about.
You know, I you know, something you said was, I mean, you run a $100 million organization, and I run something slightly comparable, a $2 million organization. I'm just kind of a little nonprofit, but the same profit, the same notion of fiscal responsibility is there, because you don't spend what you don't have, and you plan and you utilize every dollar. So I respect that very much. Let me ask you a question. Your opponent is all over the state, campaigning very strongly, and I was just trying, and it has some endorsements, I know, from some folks in Montgomery County. What is your strategy? Your strategy at this point, with another, you know, week or another thing today, maybe a day left of early voting, and one more day. What is your strategy to get your message out, and who are some of the people who are supporting you in your effort?
You know, I think one of the important things to talk about is that I have been all over the state as well. I have been going full bore across the state.
I know, that's why I'm trying to give you an opportunity to tell everybody that.
Yeah. I have been all over the state, and I've worked all over. And I think people need to understand that. You know, one of the things that happens with me, I'm not part of the political machine. So people are having to get to know, and they always say, I didn't know that about you. I didn't know that about you. I'll go back to a quote that I got from my mom that I've kind of tried to live my life by. And that is, she would always remind us that if you did something if you did something for somebody, expecting a thank you, you did it for the wrong reason. Well, so many of the things I have done in my life to try and contribute and make this world a better place, and in the state and all, it's not something that I go around telling, look at what I did, look at what I did, look at what I did. So as I go around the state, my message right now is just getting people to know me, just getting people to understand the message of what the comptroller's role is as the chief fiscal officer. You need to have experience. You need to have that executive leadership. It's not a legislative job. You know, it's great. I mean, I think that's always good to have. I mean, that's what I like about being mayor. You get the opportunity. It's boots on the ground every day. Right now, you know, my calls all night, my calls this morning were all about the city. We had that storm come through. We've got a lot of damage done. We've got power outages. I myself, when you blinked out, and I'll have no power and all. So we're working through that. But what I'm getting to with that is that you have to know how to build a budget, but also manage a budget.
Mayor, let me ask you one question, and then we'll open it up for questions from the floor. So for those of us who have joined us today, please prepare your any questions you might have in mind to either, again, put in the chat box and I'll ask, or for us to unmute and ask you directly. So Mayor, you're sitting back. I'd like to ask this question of every candidate. You're sitting in the controller's office. Your feet are on top of the desk. You're sitting there. You're sitting there relaxing. You just finished your second term. You're having your favorite drink, whether it's an adult beverage or a cup of coffee. And you're saying, "Oh, I've just done two terms as controller. This is long enough for anybody. I feel like I've given back and I feel satisfied." And the day before you leave and you're staring at the top of your office and you're saying, what are the three things you want to look back and say, I got these three things done and I'm most proud of it? What are the three things you want to look back and say, I feel good about this. I got this done. I got this done. I got this done.
Yeah, I think the first is to make sure that I've maintained the accountability to the people, that I've been a really good watchdog on how the agencies spend our money. I think that's important. Along that lines, I hope that I can do, and some of these are kind of generalist in view. But I'd also like to make sure that we've had an opportunity for equity and inclusion, that we've created an environment, Board of Public Works and others, where everybody has an opportunity. Because the reality is the more we encourage other businesses and help grow other businesses and do those things, then that means that we know greater competition creates lower prices and greater innovation. So I'd like to see that. I'd like to make sure that we have these MBE goals, that we're creating an environment that everyone needs to do it. And a part of that accountability as well was just making sure that we're fully funding education as best we can, and we're watching our dollars there. I guess last but not least is that we have a safe state, that we created an environment where, the hate crimes and all are down, that we create so many opportunities for people that we can reduce some of the challenges we have.
Mayor, thank you. Now I'd like to open the floor. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to? You put your hand up on the screen. You can just send me a text in the chat box. Please feel free. This is your opportunity to speak with the man who may be the next controller of the state of Maryland, and you're a unique choice to have some individual time. So give folks a minute. Michael, would you like to come off screen, or would you like me to ask the question for you? Okay.
You can ask it. Go ahead.
Is that Michael Eric Siegel?
Yes, it is. Hi, Ron.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
How are you, Ron?
My buddy. Michael actually had a great career training federal judges, and has written quite a few books on presidential leadership, by the way.
Great.
And he's
Thank
a great,
you, Ron.
very good friend.
Thank you.
Very interesting question. What steps would you recommend to make public service attractive to Maryland residents? And I'll add, besides raise the salary.
Yeah, I think one of the things, but first I have to let Michael know, for those who aren't aware, my wife is the Chief and Administrative Judge of the 7th Judicial Circuit of the state of Maryland.
Oh, so you,
and so I'm very proud of her. Yeah, she was the first African-American woman appointed to the bench of Prince George's County.
Yeah. Do you know,
now, as I said,
do you know Judge Peter Krauser and Judge Sherry Krauser?
Very, very well.
Yeah, Peter is probably my most important mentor, and Peter was the president of the JCRC, and Sherry. And interesting, just one thing, that Sherry, who's a judge, and her mother, who is a judge, was the first mother-daughter judge combination in American history.
Yes, and
So
I know
pretty exciting, right? So anyway,
yeah, and I know them very well.
Yeah,
and my wife is very good friends with. We're all very close, and they really, because my wife and Sherry, Judge Krauser, were on the bench together and did those things, and Peter Krauser has been someone who has given me some advice along the way indirectly. So, but they're a great family. But yes, I do know them.
Okay.
So going back to the question you were asking, what steps would I take to make this? Could you repeat the question?
What steps would you recommend to make public service attractive to Maryland?
I think that's a great point, because right now we're going through such a time now As you probably know, as business owners and organizations of all kinds, recruitment and retention is just really hard. I think the kind of things we need to do are some of the things I did when I was working and helping with public safety and also within my own organization. And number one, you have to create that environment that makes people feel welcomed in the sense of everyone knows that they will be treated fairly. I think that the second thing that goes along with that is people need to know that you care. It's simplistic, but it's so real. People need to understand and feel that it's an organization, a place where they can fit in and that they're welcome, their talents are welcome. One of the things that we have within the organization is making sure that we have those sessions where we allow people to talk about what they want, but give them a sense of freedom to do that. And I think that's important. And you have to understand when you do that, those first two, for a lot of organizations, it will help to bring other people there. And I think the last thing is creating a place, an environment where they understand that what they're doing matters, understanding the mission. Understanding that what they do within you, do those things, when we start having people feel that they're welcome, that they know that there's an opportunity there to be judged just for your performance. Everything else put aside. One of the things I say within my organization, being very, very candid, is often I just tell everybody, leave your politics at the door. We support the warfighter. We support our men and women in uniform all over this world. And you need to make sure that you understand the environment of where you're working and what you're doing. It is somewhere where you can be free to express and to work and to accomplish the mission and make sure that they're appreciated. And again, that sounds so simplistic, but I think all of us within organizations that we've tried to grow and that you manage, that's not always easy. And that's about being able to talk to people and relate to people. And you asked me a little earlier about what is it that I really wanted to accomplish in the last days of the election and all. And that is just getting people to know a little more about me and understanding that it's about making people feel welcome, and it's about accomplishing the mission, but doing it in such a way that it's all inclusive to everyone. The work environment. You've got to make sure you provide a physical as well as mental environment where people can flourish. You have to make sure you provide and people feel good about that. They have to be safe. One of the issues we've seen all over is, again, even with state and other, but we got to make sure people feel safe in that environment. And I think that's the key. I think those are the things that I would really look at this.
Right. Thank you, Mayor. Would anybody else like to ask a question? Albert, Stefan, Kevin, Mark, Vita? Give it a moment. Okay, on that note, Mayor, would you like to close out with any closing statement? I know you have a lot of campaigning ahead of you today.
Yes, and just as importantly, but more importantly right now, having to make sure that the citizens in the city of Bowie
have electricity.
And that we got a emergency management team meeting right now. I'm going to get a debrief on that. We may have to call in outside resources. I've reached out to the governor to see whether or not we're going to have to, if he's going to declare a state of emergency and what I need to do, if I need to declare a state of emergency here and all. And so, but that talks about the reality of why I'm running, but also why I hope all of you can spread the word about my candidacy. Look, it's great to have the executive leadership and management I had on my business. The ups and downs of that, as you know, makes you stronger and wiser. But also the executive leadership in being the mayor. a lot of the things that I had forged within my go through my company and all that, I brought to the city as a mayor. And there were things that needed to be done, and a couple of things done. And you have to understand the good part about that is not only do you have to legislate, as the chair of the city council, passing those things and codifying those things. What we do there is you don't just pass it, you have to implement it. And that's the key. When you're talking about a large organization, it's about the implementation of those things you do as well. So you have to understand the legislative side, and you have to be engaged in that. That's what I do as a mayor. But you also have to understand what it is to implement it, what it is to manage budgets, build budgets, and do all of those things. And that's why I think I'm probably the most uniquely qualified candidate for comptroller, we've had in a very long time, because I bring all of that executive experience. It's like all of those things in my life have built up to this moment. I understand what equity and inclusion is. I know it's not buzzwords. I know it's something you have to fight for. I've done that across the country. I understand what it is to understand and want to have a safe environment for people. I want to make sure that we, as an organization and as a state, that we're looking at that. But I think one of the keys to all of this is understanding people and understanding how to manage a large organization. I think very well that we can talk about it, but when you have 1,200 people at 12 locations all throughout the state, you're talking about coming in, and you're talking about the issues with recruitment and retention and managing a budget and looking at potential recession. You don't have time to just learn on the job. This is a time where we could be facing a lot of people who don't understand that if we hit a real hard financial bump in the road, a recession or something, by constitution, the comptroller can go in and cut every agency of the state by 25%. You need to have somebody who understands what that looks like and feels like. As I said, I've led my large business to
That's a huge impact. Excuse me, Mayor. That's a huge 25. Imagine if 25% of state services were elected, were sliced. The state would feel it overnight.
Yeah, and so we have to talk about how do you do that? How do you make sure that is fair to everyone? How do we go back to what we just talked about? How do we make sure that isn't just piled on the back of the hardworking men and women, but that we look at it systemically within an organization? And you need to understand organizations, large organizations, how they work, right. and understand when cuts are made, what impact they will have. So I will simply say to you that, I appreciate those who want to serve and do this. I appreciate those who want to come in, but I think it's something that requires experience with a large organization, particularly at these perilous times for us. Right. It's important.
On that note, unless you have any other concluding words, Mayor, I'd like to thank you for joining us for today's Zoom, and I'd like to thank all of you thank my colleague, Debbie Miller, who has organized probably 15 Zooms for candidates for governor, comptroller, attorney general, county executive. I hope some of you had a chance to join us. They've made me a more knowledgeable individual. I think it's been a wonderful experience having an opportunity to meet with candidates one-on-one. Mayor, in the most nonpartisan way possible, I wish you the best of luck. And thank you all for joining us. And please, whatever you do, I always say this, vote or don't complain.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And if I could just add one other thing, that is.
And actually, you may want to put your website down in case anybody wants to get involved in your campaign.
Yeah. And that's chimadams.org. But what I wanted to say to you is, I would ask that you, in a nonpartisan way, just make sure that you share this moment that we've had. Share who I am from what you see, because I am very transparent. I am who you see here. but more importantly, because a part of it is I've not been a part of that political machine, and I need people just to share who I am
Right.
and talk to people. And again, not telling anybody what to do, but just share it so that people can look and understand.
Well, one way that people can share, if you're a supporter of Mayor Adams for Comptroller, is that these videos, these recordings, these interviews that we do go up on our YouTube channel. And you can very easily forward the entire interview or share the interview with your friends and your network, which is a very easy way to be a force multiplier and encourage your friends and your network to listen to Mayor Adams' vision for the future and for the Comptroller Office. It's an easy power that you all have. The video is usually up within 24 hours or less.
Yes, and one last thing is, I do want to thank you for this opportunity, but I also say, we have got to make sure that we all come together. It's important for me to say this isn't political in any way. This isn't about the comptroller's race, but it's just about good common decency to each other. And, we need to make sure that we keep ourselves safe, all of us.
Yes.
We need to make sure that we put out there that, there is a common bond amongst all of us. And that is, we need to stop the hate. We need to make sure that we embrace each other in such a way with the dignity and respect that all of us are doing.
I appreciate those comments, especially in today's polarized and
Yes.
world which lacks even the basics of civil discourse anymore.
Yes. And thank you again for having a chance to talk with you. And hopefully when I talk to you again, I will be the comptroller of the state of Maryland.
And if you do, you got to have people like me knocking at your door. All right.
I'll be welcoming it.
All right. Thank you very much, Mayor, and wishing you the best in your campaign. On that note, thank you everybody for joining us, and have a good day.